Hi, this is Braden Holtby.
Hey, this is Tanner the Bulldozer Bozer.
Hi, this is Brian Burke from Toronto, Ontario.
This is Daryl Sutter.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carly Agro from Sportsnet Central.
This is Jay Onright.
This is Quick Dick coming to you from Toughnut, Saskatchewan.
Hey, everybody. My name is Theo Fleury.
This is Kelly Rudy.
This is Corey Cross.
This is Wade Redden.
This is Jordan Tutu.
My name is Jim Pattison.
Hey, it's Ron McLean, Hockey Night in Canada and Rogers Hometown Hockey, and welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast.
Your T-Bar 1 Tale of the Tape. Originally from Cambridge, Ontario, he worked for The Score from 2005 to 2010 and brought you a sketch called Cabbie on the Street. From 2011 to 2019, he worked for TSN, bringing you Cabbie Presents. These were 3 to 5 minute long sketches where he sat down with people like Mike Tyson, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Dana White, Aaron Rodgers, Will Smith, Will Ferrell, Kevin Hart. That's just to name a few. His style of interviewing superstars is very unique, employing such tactics as close proximity, hugs, and very obscure questions that equate to exceptional television. Currently, he works for Bleacher Report on the BR Betting Show. I'm talking about the one and only Cabbie Richards. So buckle up. Here we go.
This is Cabbie Richards, and you're listening to the Sean Newman Podcast, baby. You're in the right place.
Well, welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast. Tonight, I'm joined by Mr. Cabbie Richards. Everybody knows you as Cabbie, so thanks for hopping on, man.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you extending the invite and having me. Thank you.
I think most people know, we were just talking about this. I think most people know a good chunk of your story. But what makes you so cool is your uniqueness. Like you're not the standard reporter who stands there and, so I'm always interested in man, you must have been stressed going outside the box. And that stress right off the hop must have been as exciting as it was, Cabbie. I'm sure it was am I making the right choice or maybe not? Maybe you can shed some light on that.
Not in the beginning. It got more stressful as I became more established. And then there was an expectation from either from myself or from the network or from the audience. But at the beginning, I was just trying to be different and I was just trying to be myself. I guess it was stressful in approaching strangers because I started in 2001 and there weren't like a quote unquote man on the street segment. That format had existed in television and Rick Mercer was excellent at it. I can't remember if he was on Royal Canadian Air Force or This Hour Has 22 Minutes.
22 minutes.
A segment called, was it 22 minutes? Okay. And he did a segment called Talking to Americans. Now, I'm not exactly sure when that started, but mainstream Canada or Canadian television knew of, streeter segments. And I was on this upstart called The Score. At the time, it was called Headline Sports. And here I was, this chubby 23-year-old, walking around the city of Toronto, just approaching strangers to ask them stupid sports questions about stats or mascots or, fight songs or uniforms. I don't even remember some. And then I would just challenge people to push-ups or playing street hockey in busy intersections. There were a bunch of dumb things. I went to I went tailgating in New England. We went to my man D when he joined the crew. We went to a Montreal Expos game and we watched the Florida Marlins versus the Expos. And I didn't know that you weren't really allowed to talk to the players before the game, but I played catch with Brad Penny. I was like, yo, do you want to throw the ball around? He's like, okay. And I was like, this is amazing. I'm throwing the ball around with a guy who would the following season be a critical piece to a world championship team in the Florida Marlins. But I just didn't know any better. So it wasn't as stressful in the beginning, but approaching strangers was tough because you get a lot of rejection. And that's you kind of build up an armor. So for every 10 people that would appear in one of these Cabbie on the Street segments, I would probably get 30 or 40 no's. I was batting anywhere between 200 and 250. So to get up to 8 to 10 people was I felt relief. And then it was like, all right, I got to go cut this thing. And that's going to take a full day to edit it down to, a 3 or 4 minute piece.
But as you get more popular, certainly you weren't batting only 250. Like I'm assuming as it progresses, you got to start batting way higher average, right? Like, or is that just a fan watching it and assuming that?
No. Well, I mean, the average, it did increase because as I built more of a reputation for myself and I had like some athletes had more familiarity, but for a long time, I've got a lot of no's. Like even in my final week at TSN, I ended it with 5 NFL interviews leading into the 2019 season. So I had Patrick Mahomes, Michael Thomas, Joey Bosa, Emmanuel Sanders, and the great Aaron Rodgers. But we got a lot of, we would ask for like, for instance, Tom Brady, 0. We asked for Tom Brady once a year, 0. I don't even know if we got a response from Stacey James, who was the PR director for the New England Patriots for about 20 years. And maybe just because Tom didn't want to do anything outside of he has a great relationship with oh my gosh, who's the gentleman that did the LeBron decision interview? I'm
not going to be able to spit that out. I know who you're talking about.
Balding, older gentleman. Oh my gosh, I could see his face. And then during the 1999 World Series, he kind of ambushed Pete Rose at the MLB All-Star game. So then the Yankees, when they're in the World Series, they refused to speak. Jim Gray.
There you go. So you beat me.
Tom Brady has a great relationship with Jim Gray, and he would appear on his radio show. But, Cam Newton was another, as I think about New England, Cam Newton was another athlete Russell Westbrook never got. And these are guys we would ask for once or twice a year. And we're like, hey, we'll fly there appear on an off day. So some of the secret sauce for my interviews is I would always go on a practice day, on an off day, because guys would be in better moods. It was taking a risk trying to interview an athlete on a game day, and certainly didn't want to wait till after a game to interview someone. But one time I interviewed Peter Forsberg, maybe actually the only time I interviewed him. And I went for the morning skate. He's like, hey, can we do it after the game? I was like, okay, cool, man. But I just know it was such a roll of the dice, because if they lose, the guys are going to be in a bad mood. And for me, I need the players to be at optimal happiness, optimal playfulness, because if not, it's going to be a short interview and it's going to be bad. And I've had many of those. But so this Forsberg, Flyers, this is when he was with the Flyers. Flyers are playing in Carolina and they lost 8-6. Like 14 goals in a hockey game is not normal. But I think he had a hat trick. So even though his team lost, he played well, and he still gave me the interview afterwards. And I think we ate pizza because this is in 2006 or 2007, the nutrition wasn't what it is now. Now guys are getting protein shakes and recovery shakes and that kind of. Then it was just 2 large cheese pizzas or 4 large cheese pizzas in the dressing room. Guys just crush it, just carb load right after because they just burned 2,000 calories skating around for 20 full minutes. And yeah, but I got lucky with that one. But generally, off days is where I go do my damage.
Do you remember who the first? So I'm married to an American. I'm married to a girl from Minnesota.
Okay.
She'd never heard of you before, which probably fair. You're a big icon in Canada, and we know that doesn't exactly translate all the time.
I don't have that many. There aren't that very many women viewers of the score. I mean, there were some.
Fair.
But it wasn't like Home and Garden TV. We're like the opposite of Home and Garden.
I showed her your stuff though, and she was like in stitches, man, like laughing because it's that good, right? But I was saying to her, I'm like, can you imagine the first time being Cabbie and going up to some professional athlete and just trying to hey man, just leaning in,
yes.
Who do you remember who that was?
The very first one was, I think it was Wade Belak, God rest his soul.
Okay.
It was on a day, it was like I got Wade Belak, I believe Darcy Tucker, and I think Brian McCabe. So this is, I want to say 2002. And Wade was just big smile. He was very friendly. I mean, you hear that about enforcers. They're like the nicest guys, but have the hardest jobs because they got to go from 0 to 100 in the snap of a finger. And then I think it was the next day I had combined. I think I was doing something on pregame meals, which, you know, in my 23-year-old brain, I'm like, this is a great question, you know. And at that time, people weren't, I don't think a lot of people were asking athletes things about them as human beings, as like regular dudes. It was always about the game or whatnot. And I was like, let me find out about you just to see if we have something in common and we can find a common ground so the audience can be like, oh, this guy uses ha 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 as well, like in his text messages now, not in 2002. You know, this guy has a PlayStation 2 also, or, you know, this guy does franchise mode or whatever. Okay. So that on the Raptors side, it was Morris Peterson, and who else was it in 2002? I think Jerome Williams, JYD, and both guys were awesome to me. JYD was like built for doing stuff on camera, and Mo P was just super chill. Mo P was like 2 years removed from winning a national championship at Michigan State. Good-looking kid, lefty, shot the three. Anyway, so I think those were the first 5, and I believe it was in the same episode, if not like it was back-to-back episodes where I got a press pass. Oh, I could go to the practice, and there was a lot of side-eye, Sean. Like a lot of dudes were just like, what the hell's going on? Like, who is this guy? Because I was in there, baseball cap, T-shirt, baggy jeans, sneakers. Sometimes the baseball cap was backwards. I dressed the way I dressed going to the mall or going to school. Like there wasn't much professional about me except for my affiliation, which was the Score. And like the cameraman was a year older than I was, because Bryant and I, you know, I finished school in 99. He finished in 2000, and then he had a camera and I had a big mouth, and then boom, away we went. So it was quite a guerrilla operation. 2 dudes, and then my man D joined. So there's 3 of us for many, many years, just the 3 of us.
Did you get shut down when you leaned in the first time though? Like what? Like
Oh no. First time, no, because I always wanted to make the guy feel like we were friends, and that,
right.
And I wasn't afraid of them. I was like, when I first stepped in the room, it was daunting. It was like, whoa, I'm in the Leafs dressing room. Or the Raptors dressing room. Like, these are professional athletes and everybody is so tall. But I think because I looked different and I acted differently and I wasn't afraid of them, and I wasn't there with an agenda. I wasn't there like, oh, so you have your 7th concussion, or you got your bell rung in the 3rd period. How are you feeling? None of that stuff. It was like, you know, what video games are you playing right now? And if someone said NBA Street or SSX or Grand Theft Auto, I'd be like, oh, you're just like me. And that was a connection point. So I was looking for those connection points. So the most memorable first person that that was taken aback by my style or was like weirded out by it was Mario Lemieux. I was on a golf course. It was like a Bell celebrity golf course. Mario Lemieux was golfing with Ty Domi. And I tried to put my arm around Mario Lemieux. And then he like pretended that he was going to punch me. Oh no, that was Ty Domi. But Lemieux he was like he had no, like I was like, it felt like I was ambushing him. And maybe I did for all intents and purposes, asking him something stupid. I don't know if it was about entourages. I can't even remember. But Mario like pantomimed like he was going to punch me. And then like Ty Domi in his giant head was right beside me. And he's like, how'd that go? And I was like, not good. So, I mean, it's not as though I could be like, yo, get away from me, Ty Domi, or like bleep you. Because then this is Ty Domi, who could like scare the soul out of my body with like a fake left, because he was a southpaw, or legit knock the soul out of my body with a real left hook. So that wasn't the best day, but it made for a great moment on TV.
You know, I've heard you mention a couple times ambushing some very notable figures, and you've taken your shot to you know, try and get that clip. And you know, Mario hops out. The other guy who hops out is when you're on the golf course talking to Michael Jordan, and you hug Michael Jordan. I mean, it's Michael Jordan.
Yes.
right? So I can't imagine well, you probably climbed the CN Tower after that because, I mean, it's Michael Jordan. But two, like, to have the balls to do that, like, lead me through the story of Michael Jordan.
So that time I was afraid. That's because I revered Michael, and not to say I didn't revere some of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Michael was like a global icon.
Michael Jordan is on. Love the Leafs, right? I love hockey. Michael Jordan. How many people are in that realm?
Very few. He's on the Mount Rushmore of like greatest or greatest champions ever. He's on the Mount Rushmore.
Ever.
Yeah.
Like, just go, for any listener who still hasn't watched The Last Dance, just go watch that again and go, oh man,
Yeah.
right? The guy is like legit.
So we were driving, and like, so we went from the Score, which was downtown Toronto, to a golf course in Oakville for Mike Weir's celebrity golf tournament. And we got like, as we were driving, my man D gets a phone call. He's like, all right, okay, boom. And they're like, yeah. He's like, he turns to the back. It's like, they said that Michael Jordan's not doing any interviews. So we were already on the highway. We were just going to go and figure it out. And we had this is 2009. So we sort of developed this, what's the word I'm looking for? Not a skill. I guess a process. That's not the word.
Like a routine?
A routine. Yeah, a routine is probably the best word. We developed a routine where Dave would kind of play defense. So he would have small talk with the PR person or like somebody else, but just to give me some time.
Divide and conquer.
Yeah, divide and conquer. But on the golf course, there were no PR people. It was just the golfers and then like the marshals. But we would wait. So that was like part of the strategy. We're just waiting. Let everybody else get their sound bites. And if the athlete is just kind of hanging around afterwards, then I can approach. And then they're like, no one else needs time from this athlete, so I can have a few more minutes if they're willing to give it to me. Now, in the case of Michael Jordan, he wasn't talking to anybody. But so when I showed up, and then, we asked like one of the guys on the course, like, hey, where's the best spot to like get an interview? Like, what's the best hole? And the person was like, hole number 1 is probably the best place to get him. Because the media was told when they're getting interviews to go to like hole 14 or 17. So we're like, we want to be away from the general media so we won't get bothered and we wouldn't have to compete for the athlete's time. Jordan was golfing with Kevin Costner and I can't remember the other pair. But they were, people there to see Michael. So we went to hole number 1. And there's a huge gallery. So then you could feel the energy change because Michael was approaching. And then like this wave of people was approaching the first hole before we could see him. Just like all these more people showed up like, oh my gosh, it's happening. And then my chest was like my heart was pounding in my chest. And there's one other reporter from Global. So then Michael shows up. And then it's just like, it's kind of awkward. Like we're there to try to get an interview. But you just kind of have to feel out the right time to approach the person. Because if you approach them when they're having a conversation, it pisses them off. And I've made that mistake many times. It's almost like double dutch. You have to pick your spot to when you want to jump in and then have this 45-second sprint, in conversation and then jump out of the double dutch and then keep moving. So then we both approached Michael. Hey, Mike, Michael, would it be possible to ask you a couple of questions? So then MJ's like, well, I'm only going to answer one of your questions. And I was like, oh, okay. So I pointed to the guy from Global. I was like, hey, man, you go ahead, man. You can ask your questions. Because I knew he was there and he had to get some sound bites for like the 6 o'clock news or something. So he gets a couple of questions. And then the other pair in the foursome, they were teeing up. So there was extra time. And also it's MJ. So if MJ was going to hold up the whole caravan, the whole foursome, he's going to hold them up. So then, and I was like, well, Michael, I brought you a card. And I didn't have my mic extended, I don't think. So I go into my back pocket and I bought this card at Shoppers Drug Mart and it just had like the AOK symbol on it. And then I just thought that would be a funny card to give to Michael Jordan, who's one of the greatest champions in sports. But like on the inside of the card, the caption read, you're okay in my books. So I give him the card and he goes, I don't know what's in here. I'm like, no, it's just a thank you card. I'm like, go ahead and open it. So he's struggling to open it because it was in my back pocket. And from the drive from Toronto to Oakville was about 45 minutes. And then it was in like September, so it was still hot out. Plus I'm fat. So my bum had curved the card in my back pocket. So it looked like a half moon. It just looked like it had gone through something. So when he's trying to open it, like the envelope is wet and he's sort of struggling to, finally he opens it and then he reads the inside. And he doesn't say anything. We're on a golf course. It is quiet. So everybody's just waiting for a reaction. So then, and then I just turn to the audience because this is the moment. I'm like, I just gave him a thank you card. And I just said, thank you for being awesome because he's awesome, right? And then that's, people applauded. And then I wrote, so I'm projecting my voice so that 1,000 people came in. And then I wrote, thank you for making fat kids believe that they could fly for 0.5 seconds. And I got a laugh and that felt awesome. And then I just turned to him and I said, and also, I just want to give you one of these. And then I just, I embraced him and I just hugged him where I could feel his heartbeat on my ear because he's 6'6" and I'm 6 feet tall. So it's a grown man is pressing on his chest and then he could feel the warmth of my body and my fandom transfer into his torso while I'm gripping him like a grizzly bear, gripping the side of a tree, the side of a friggin' Douglas fir 400 feet in the air, like I wasn't letting go of the man. So he peeled me off with his elbow after like 7 seconds. And similarly, I once hugged Gordie Howe like that. Gordie Howe immediately, it's like he had his elbow ready to pry me off before I even started to embrace the man. It's like he was like locked and loaded to throw an elbow because that's what he'd been doing for 50 years of playing professional hockey. So it was an incredible moment for me. And I was afraid, but I went there to interview Michael Jordan. And as we spoke earlier, there was an expectation once I left the station that I was going to get Michael Jordan. So I had to just take my shot and thank God I got it.
It's a cool story. You have a way with, you're an entertainer is what you are. You have a way of telling a story. Your word choice is fantastic. It's just like, I'm reminded as we sit here and talk why I enjoyed watching you on The Score back in the day and why Cabbie Presents is so cool and everything that you seem to touch is really good. My question then is, I highly doubt maybe you've always been like that, Cabbie, and maybe that's exactly what you're about to say. But I knew growing up you wanted to be an actor. So
Yes.
Did you watch, who was the guy that you watched and you said, man, if I could just be like, if I could be just a little bit like that? And then, is that where it comes from?
I think so. And I don't know if it was so consciously that. No, I think it was. So there were like three guys. There was Jim Carrey on In Living Color, the famous sketch comedy show on Fox. Then it was Will Smith from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and it was Martin Lawrence, and he had a show on Fox called Martin. And it was a combination of those three guys because all their characters were bigger than life. They were very animated. And I know that I borrowed from all three of them in my cadence, in my impressions, certainly ripping off their facial expressions, the way that they punctuate jokes, pratfalls, just stupid 14-year-old, 15-year-old humor. So there's, fart jokes and all that kind of nonsense that we would do as kids. I was absorbing a lot of their comedic sensibilities and trying to form some of my own. And like I was a pretty gregarious student at school, and we would sometimes play fight, or we would be, someone might brush up against me, and I'd throw myself into the lockers just to get a reaction, and then pretend to cry or whatever. Like basically, I was a giant attention hog. And was always disrupting the class because I wanted to make girls laugh. Basically, for a lot of, I can say, I don't know what the number is, but I'm sure in the formative years for several, if not hundreds or thousands of young male musicians, getting the attention from girls or adulation or validation from girls was a huge motivator. Athletes too. You know, I'm not saying Nigel did this, but when I used to go to track meets, and I've always been a fat guy my whole life. So while Nigel was moving around the track like a gazelle, and all the trackletes, they had the way that they were warming up, you know, they had like this bounce to them, and they would go like the four guys in the 4x1 would be like in unison. Like in the way that people would, the great hurdlers, like they take 4 steps, hurdle, 4 steps, hurdle, like, and they would be prancing around the infield of some school we went to for a track meet, and they were the not the gazelles, but they were the peacocks. And here I am, a friggin' walrus throwing around a 12-pound ball of iron in the shot put. Hey, I do shot put. Nigel's out there. And I'm just like throwing a discus, a 14-pound discus or a javelin. Not very well, by the way. But I just wanted to be on the team. And I wanted to meet some girls too. Nigel was an expert at it. So are many of those track leads. All I'm saying is when you're young and impressionable and when you have a batting average of like 75 in high school, you know, when you get the attention or a laugh from a girl, you're like, oh, that euphoria, that dopamine hit back in the day was the equivalent of somebody liking your photo on Instagram or liking 8 in a row. You're like, whoa, you just see the same name as you scroll up, like, this is amazing. So I'm sure that informed some of the way I behaved in school. And then I was one of the few kids that was doing, like, I was a high school jock. Like I played football and baseball. Again, not very well. But then I did plays, and we wrote, we did videos for the school assembly. So there was like athlete side, and then there was like the performance side. So I found, I suppose later in life when I got to the score, I got to dabble in sports and also be some kind of a performer. So it worked out.
Oh, you're definitely a performer. I mean, no doubt in my mind. Everything you do in your sketches, even the way you interview, is a performance, right? I would argue most interviewers, unless you're Will Ferrell, right? When he gets going, ask the question, back and forth. They're not, and you make it a presentation. Like just the way you go about it elicits, like, it just makes you want to smile while you're watching it. Like, what is this guy doing? Like, this is pretty good.
Jerry D was great at it.
Jerry
too.
D's another
completely different energies. It was like 180. Like Jerry was very straight and really dry, and he was always, his character, the sports reporter, was always the star of the interview. And I tried to be, I wanted to make sure the athlete was the star, but also try to get a few moments in as well. But Jerry was great at interviewing too, because he would sometimes make people feel uncomfortable about like where they stood, or they had to get closer to the microphone, or they're in his lighting. He would just make up some technical issue in order to generate a little bit of awkwardness. And then he was always like, I'm better at hockey than you, or I'm better at golf than you. His character was always better than the athlete that he was interviewing. So the fact that I started a little bit earlier than Jerry, but we were both at the score at the same time. Giving the audience 2 different perspectives on athletes was like a great time in the score's history.
Speaking of Jerry and yourself for that matter, do you put on a persona then when you go on to those, or is that you? Are you that way at all times, or are you playing a part? Does that make sense?
I'm just amplifying my personality. I can't be like that all the time, because I'm already obnoxious, in the few moments that someone would experience me. But I can't be at like 12 the whole time, because I would need to sleep for 4 out of 7 days, because that just takes a lot of energy. So I pick my spots, and then also it depends on the environment. Like, I'll try to give you an example. I know that if I'm in a baseball clubhouse, they're very quiet. And if I'm in like, let's see, I was in the Dodgers clubhouse once and I was interviewing Matt Kemp and I was asking him about his baseball hat and how often he changes his hat because you get like that salty sweat around the band. And plus baseball's a summer sport. But I would tone it down because it was like, it's the first time I'm in the Dodgers clubhouse. People don't know me. I don't want to get thrown out. So I have to sort of pick my spots. But if I'm somewhere where I feel really comfortable, like if it's, my home court. So it's Leafs dressing room, Raptors dressing room, Jays clubhouse, or the field at the Skydome, then, I feel I can crank it up. And if I'm in an environment where there's a lot of space, I want to use a lot of that space. There was a time when I interviewed JJ Watt and we were in like this auxiliary dressing room. So it was like just a generic football locker room. So just JJ Watt, myself, camera guy. So it was a camera guy, my man D, myself, three of us, JJ Watt, and the PR director for the Houston Texans. And because we're in an empty room, I was like, all right, I can like turn it up a little bit. And it's my first time meeting JJ Watt. So I want to make an impression, a good one. And I also brought props. I brought him like a flip phone from like 2001. And I brought him like this, like the JJ Watt, like first aid kit, which he can give to other players when he knocks them out. There was like sunglasses and Advil. And he appreciated, and we put we had like a label on I think it was just like a 7-year-old like lunchbox that we bought from Walmart, and we just put like a sticker on it or whatever. But athletes appreciate when you think out of the box and you give them custom things. So in that time, I could perform a little bit. And then the next time I interviewed JJ Watt, I think it was at the next time I interviewed him in Houston, we were in this like closet, bro. It was like again, it was in an auxiliary, like I was gonna say a BP room, like kind of a junk room. So we had to make like this makeshift backdrop and clear out some chairs and some equipment. But I was so familiar with them, then I could perform a little bit bigger because this is like the second time. So whatever we did in the second time would have to be bigger than the first time. And then the third time when I went to interview JJ Watt, it was on a baseball field and he was having a charity softball game. And we went to a Walmart in Houston, Texas to find the biggest Nerf like gun. It probably weighed 30 pounds. And I had put on the jersey of every opponent that he was going to face in that 17-week schedule, 16 opponents. And then I got him to shoot me. I was like, where are you going to cause the most damage? So he shoot me in my face, shoot me in my shoulder, shoot me in my stomach. For each guy that I'd take off a jersey. And then it was the Bengals quarterback to remove another jersey. Then it was the Dolphins, remove another jersey. Then it was Baltimore, et cetera, et cetera. So there are times when here's another one was the Detroit Red Wings. So this is one of the original 6 hockey teams, as you know. They're a prestigious club. So this is in like the 08, 09, 2010 era. 08 and 09, they both years they went to the Cup final. They won in 08, lost in 09. But I went so many times that like everybody was familiar with me, but I still didn't want to mess around too much there because I felt like the PR guy I think his name was John Hahn, and he was like 48. He was like a no nonsense kind of a guy. So I didn't really want to be too big in that room as far as the energy that I brought. Cause I wanted to get access. I wanted to preserve my access to the players. Cause Sean, that's the hardest thing. Is once you get your access cut off, you're like, it feels like a death sentence. And sometimes getting the access is so hard.
Have you had your access cut then?
Not in Detroit. No.
But you have had it cut before in a place.
Yes. I've had my access limited to Sid, to
Crosby?
Yeah. I've never interviewed Austin Matthews, and I'm from Toronto. And I worked in Toronto from the moment he was drafted by the club.
Why?
To now. And the PR staff was very cautious with who they would let Austin and Mitchie speak to in the rookie season. And apparently that directive came down from Lou Lamoriello, who's an old school dude.
Yeah.
And wasn't about the fun and games, was just about
Business.
Get the pucks in deep, just traditional hockey, and everything other than like a post-game interview was seen as a distraction, I suppose, the way from what I was told in Lou Lamoriello's eyes. So I didn't get access. But so I had this one, I sort of circumvented. I did circumvent the PR guys. Once then I got in a lot of trouble.
Circumvent? No.
The old reach around. I took that from Arrested Development. So I wrote this bit called the Serial Series. And it was like we were going to post these Instagram videos around the March Madness tournament, which is the greatest tournament in sports. March Madness or the World Cup, it's 1A, 1B. So I said to JVR, James Van Riemsdyk, I was like, yo, JVR, I wrote this bit, and I want you and Morgan Riley to bring the Young Bucks, and would you mind if we just shot it at your condo? He's like, all right, cool. He's like, what's the bit? I'm like, it's just you guys are drafting serials, and they're going to be in a bracket, and the games are going to be reflected by your actual games that you play. So if you draft Captain Crunch with the 1 seed and Austin Matthews drafts Cinnamon Toast Crunch with the 8 seed, on February the 2nd, if you guys play the Philadelphia Flyers and in the standings, you're the higher seed, then you with the Captain Crunch at the 1, if you guys win, then the Captain Crunch advances. It sounds more complicated than it actually was. So we shot the draft special, and unfortunately Mitch Marner was injured, so he couldn't come over to JVR's condo. So it was JVR, Morgan Riley, Austin Matthews. So we shot the draft, and we shot the first 4 matchups, and then we shot the next 2 or 3 matchups, like a previous day when Mitch could come over. And then we're going to do one final day of shooting where we get to the championship. So we post the first 3. And then my man D gets an email from the director of communications for the Toronto Maple Leafs, a guy named Steve Keogh. And the subject line of the email, all caps, was Serial Series, ! Like he was pissed. And we could feel the heat reading off our screens when this email popped up. Like, oh, like the font, it felt like the font was a 72 point in bold. Like that's the energy that we felt. So we had to go have a meeting, got in a lot of trouble, had to take the clips down. And we were just like, well, we didn't like, this is just, our defense was, look, I have a relationship with these guys. We were doing something fun. It wasn't hockey related. It was benign. We're talking about cereal. Like, basically, why is this a problem? But, we operate under the principle it's better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission, because so many times we've just been denied things. So we just, if we can go around it and then ask for forgiveness later, then that's what we're going to do. So that's what we did. Eventually we were forgiven, but we still didn't get access to Mitchie or Austin. So I don't really have an on-camera relationship with those guys. I mean, we can text each other and DM each other, but as far as like doing interviews, I never got to interview those dudes. And I wrote this bit. Oh my gosh. I wrote this bit for Mitch, and we had this cartoonist draw like the team plane. I hit up like JVR and I hit up Tyler Bozak. I'm like, who plays cards on the plane? Where do they play cards on the plane? Who's losing the most money? Who sits where? Where does Freddie sit? And we had this artist from Hong Kong draw this 90-second cartoon. And then at the end, like Mitchie is gaming with Pat Marlowe, and then like Sundin, there's like this twist ending. And then like Mitchie's agent got mad at us because we didn't clear it with him. And we're like, what are you talking about? Like, we have to clear it with you. Like, so I've been scarred a couple of times because that one we really, like, DK and I wrote that in a couple of days, like, all right, this is going to work. And then it took the animator like 3 weeks. We had to pay the guy like 10 grand to animate it. And then when we dropped it, boom, it's like this email chain just kept growing and it just kept getting elevated to different people. So we had to like take it down. And I was so mad. Like some of those things, man, where, you know, people don't really care how hard it is to get some of these interviews and to come up with ideas. They just want to see the new thing. So I don't really spend a lot of time wallowing in self-pity or like being angry, but that one really burned me. That one burned me for a long time. And Mitchie was cool about it because it wasn't him. I think he liked the piece when I sent it to him, like, yo, have a look. But it's just like the people around him and then the team and the network. And yeah.
That's tough, man. That's it's funny because as viewers, you know, and just being a viewer watching what you do, there's no like ill intent on any of your stuff. So it's like hard to think that would ever be shut down, right? Like you'd think you'd want your superstars to show that side of themselves and like to interact and like, hey, the kid's human. It's okay. It's okay to have a laugh and like to poke fun at one another and to be like that. It's crazy to think that, nope, that's locked down and not happening, especially the guy of where you were at in your career. I mean, it's pretty crazy.
You know, hockey culture is changing slowly, but it was the most repressive of the 4 major sports as far as repressing the personalities and like everybody just being sort of this homogenous, uniform kind of bland. We just want to go out and play the game we love, and that's kind of it. Some guys were more aware, or some guys made longer strides to separate themselves personality-wise, and you can see their personalities on the ice. Like when people score, it's euphoric. Ovechkin will jump into the boards. You know, guys will, you know, slide across the ice and, they'll slide their glove across, or they'll do a fist pump. Connor will do a fist pump on one skate, you know. But then, like, you get them into the room and, you know, the hockey dudes especially are taught, you know, no one player is bigger than the team. And, you know, guys you're not really supposed to have a big personality. But then, you know, if you're out at a restaurant or at a house party, then they're in their natural environments and you'll experience their big personalities. But get them in front of a camera? Nah. So it was always part of my mission to explore that. Certainly in hockey, because, I mean, I grew up in Canada and the viewership was all Canadian. So the hockey players were the biggest stars. But I wanted to explore that also in baseball and in football and in basketball. And I was lucky, man. I was very fortunate to get some great moments with some guys that people would otherwise think were like jerks based on the way that they played, from Jose Bautista to Brad Marchand to trying to think who else. I'm trying to think of players where athletes like, yo, I didn't know that guy was like, I always thought that guy was a dick. Let me think. Trying to think of each sport. Oh, was there somebody in football who I changed their mind?
Is that something, that you identified early on? Because I mean, like, you struck up a pretty cool relationship with Kobe Bryant, and Kobe Bryant at that time, I've heard you talk, you know, it was during the time that he wasn't a fan favorite of some of the stuff going on.
Yeah.
Is that something like you just kind of, whoops, I didn't realize that? Or because you talk about with Kobe Bryant in particular, just talking to him like a human, like, just, hey man, what's going on, right? And that developed into what it did for you. Is that something that you just kind of fell into and you just kept, like, not that talking to him like a human, but like you mentioned all the different sports and how different guys where they have like a negative viewpoint on them. Did you start approaching those guys off of that? What happened with Kobe? Like, did that become a mindset of like, hey, like there's opportunity here. There's guys that, are getting kind of shit on, so to speak. Maybe there's something there that can change people's minds.
Well, the mindset was always, can I make this person laugh? Can I crack this person so that I can show that they're a human being, and I can make this person, this athlete with this elite skill and this immense talent seem relatable to the audience in some way. So that was always the goal. And I don't think I was consciously thinking I'm going to try to change the perception of this athlete. I just want to hear what they sound like laughing, or I just want to have a moment where we're smiling about some memory or something about them that people didn't know, that like the athlete might say, you know what, no one's ever asked me that. For example, I'm in Las Vegas. I live in Las Vegas now. And I really would love to do, the first time I interviewed Dana White, and this is what I'm going to let you in on a secret here, Sean. One of my disarming tactics is when I meet someone for the first time, I'll introduce myself and I'll always say I'm from Toronto. And the people I interview are generally Americans, generally. So Toronto could be a conversation point. Oh, have you been there? When was the last time you were there? And then I say, I apologize if I ask you something you've already been asked. And to them, I'm just another interviewer. They don't really know who I am unless someone's prepped them like, oh, this is the guy who did A, B, and C. So then now their expectation is low. So I set the bar low so I can jump over it like I'm a fat high jumper. So let's set the bar at like 50 centimeters off the ground. So with Dana White, I asked him, Dana, like, when was the first time you organized a fight? Was it in middle school or was it in high school? And he goes, you know what? It was in high school. It was at Bishop Gorman. I was like, what was her name? He goes, you know what? It wasn't over a girl. It was over something else, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes, you know what? No one has ever asked me that before. Like, it felt like I got a star. It felt like I got a power up in Super Mario Brothers. Like I got the green mushroom, and I'm like, dude, I got a 1-up. So now that I'm in Las Vegas, and Dana White grew up, he went to high school in Las Vegas. He went to Bishop Gorman. I would love to do an interview with Dana White at the school and at the scene of where either he set up the fight or where the fight actually happened. For someone who is famous for organizing fights and who's probably filled out, I mean, we're about to be at UFC 254 with Justin Gaethje and Khabib Nurmagomedov. So at least 254 UFC fight. I mean, I know they weren't there on day one. I mean, it was the Fertittas bought it at some point. But for all intents and purposes, this guy has probably organized 4,000 fights, undercards, all that kind of fight night, all those different brands. So it would be awesome to bring him there. And I don't know if he's ever done an interview at his old high school. Maybe he has. And I'm not sure if he's ever told the story of the first fight that he set up out, like on school property. That would be pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. You know, I've heard you talk about this too before. Like, what have we been going now? Like 50 minutes. And it's just like A-lister after A-lister after A-lister after A-lister, like these big giant, like it's super cool. As a guy that likes sitting across from people and hearing a bit about them and just kind of getting to see what they're like. And, you know, I get a lot of fun. And you're a name that gets to come on, and it's one of the bigger names I've had on. And that's pretty cool. And the names you're dropping are like giant. But what you've said before is there's more relief than pride in finishing segments. Because it's like, okay, that's done. Now it's on to the next one. And I get that. Have you learned, you know, as you're on your journey and all the things you're doing, have you learned to maybe slow down a little bit and like be like, man, I just got Dana White. Like that's pretty freaking cool. You talk about Dana White. Dana White's on my list. Like that'd be a lot of fun. But I mean,
that would be awesome.
I mean, so have you learned to slow down a little bit?
Being in this new role at Bleacher Report has caused me to slow down because I'm not in the grind like I was at TSN and previously The Score, where every week I'd have to crank out a new interview. So I took a lot of pride in my work, but I felt more relief when it would finally aired or we finished it and I could go home at 2:30 in the morning from a late night edit and be like, oh, okay, it's done. Versus sitting back and smelling the roses or admiring the work that I just did. Because Dave and I had always programmed ourselves to keep chasing. Because that's part of the thing is like Saturday Night Live, maybe this is like a subconscious cue that we took from Lorne Michaels, hearing this anecdotally at some point, never meeting the man. But he said, we have a show every Saturday night at 11:30. It may not be ready, but we have a show every Saturday night at 11:30. And that's kind of the thing in television is like, there are hard deadlines and you have to meet those deadlines. And like, even if the thing is at like 60%, something's got to air because there's a 3-minute block of space with Cabbie Presents on there that we need to fill. Because if not, then you're going to put the other 40 people that work on SportsCenter in a bad spot. And they can scramble and fill that hole, but it looks terrible on you. And I never listen, there were some times when I didn't finish my piece or we had to wait on something. So, the piece wasn't ready that week. That definitely happened for whatever circumstances, but it was never a good feeling. And you just can't do that very often. Like you have to deliver because that's what you signed up for. That's what you get paid to do. And it's part of the dream job. It's like, so to answer your question, in the past year, I've been able to smell the roses a little bit, but again, my brain is in like thinking about the shows that we are working on here on Bleacher Report Betting. So it's every Tuesday, it's a show called Squad Ride. So we're talking about basketball and then there's like the baseball playoffs. So we're going to develop, we'll change the Squad Ride from NBA playoffs to MLB playoffs. And then on Sundays, group chat on Tuesdays. Sundays, it's a Squad Ride, which is predominantly football. And then it's like, the various machinations of like, what is a better? What will our betting audience enjoy? What are the games? Like, who can we focus on? Are we going to build a parlay? Are we just going to talk about totals? Like, there's a bunch of different variables, but it's a different audience. And I don't get the one-on-one stuff as often, which I do miss. But it's certainly a grind, but it's highly rewarding. When people reference an Aaron Rodgers interview or, a Sidney Crosby interview where he's laughing or, being able to, one time we made this map of America for Josh Donaldson and we made all these emojis and he put various emojis on different cities where he was playing in the schedule in like the weather pattern he was going to bring in that stadium based on the number of home runs he hits or the types of home runs so it was like an umbrella. It was like a snowstorm. It was like wind. It was like a few drops of rain. It was like, it was the thermometer because he was going to be heating up if if they had a game in Arlington, Texas or something. So when people reference some of those random things or Will Ferrell is wearing a stethoscope and he's pressing it against my heart and listening to my heartbeat. And then he says, I can't hear anything. You're dead inside. Like, that's a great moment for me. And hopefully the people who are watching, who are spending time with it also think like, oh yeah, that was cool. Or that was funny or actually laughed. The worst thing is like if they just don't react at all, which totally happens, Sean. And that's part of like the batting average in baseball. You fail 70% of the time and you're still going to the Hall of Fame. So because you get so many swings at the plate, you just hope that you hit
a couple home runs.
A couple of home runs a year, a lot of doubles,
a
handful of triples, but you just hope that you have a half decent batting average.
Well, we're closing in on the end of this, so I want to hop into the Crude Master Final Five. Just 5 quick questions, long or short as you want to go.
Okay.
Huge shout out to Heath and Tracy McDonald, who have been supporters of the podcast since it started. So the first one is, if you could party with one celeb, who are you taking?
That is an outstanding question because that is an outstanding question. I would probably want to party with Eddie Murphy in like 1986.
Oh, yeah.
Before phones, nothing is recorded. The 80s are wild. The music's terrible, but it is wild. And Eddie, you know, in the 80s was Arnold, Sylvester Stallone, and Eddie were the three biggest movie stars. And then in music, you had Michael and Prince. And then in sports, you had, it was probably still Magic in 80, Magic and Bird. And well, no, baseball was probably bigger than basketball in the 80s. And in the 80s, 85, 86, the New York Mets. Oh my gosh, imagine partying with Darryl Strawberry and Dwight Gooden. Oh my, in New York. I mean, I don't deal with the recreationals, but there'll be a lot of recreationals all over the hotel room. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna stick with my original one. Eddie in the mid 80s would be amazing.
Eddie, party all the time. Yeah.
Yes.
That would be
Yes.
great song. That was our win in senior hockey. That was our win song for like.
Was it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Shout out to Graham
That's a
Murray.
horrible song. Objectively awful. But it was a banger in like 86. It slapped, but objectively it's a terrible song.
If you could sit down with anyone to do a Cabbie Presents, to do what we're doing, I know I've heard you talk about the Holy Trinity, and for people who don't know the Holy Trinity, for you it's Beckham, Jordan, and Woods, or the O squared, which is Obama and Oprah. And I don't know, maybe you've sat down with all these people already, but who would you take? One person. You had to sit and pick their brain.
Pick their brain. Okay.
Yeah.
Pick their brain. Well, then it would probably be the 44th president of the United States would be Barack Obama. I would want it to be, God, like at a dinner, eating sushi or Mexican food, some little hole in the wall place, which would be impossible because he's the 44th president of the United States. So like, you can't go anywhere with this man unless we went to Laos or we went to Guatemala or, I mean, they don't have Mexican food in Guatemala, but okay, we went to like, you know, some small Oaxaca, Mexico or something like that, somewhere in the Andes Mountains, or the Aztecs, not the Andes. So it would be Barack Obama because obviously we could talk about sports and we could talk about culture, but we could talk about history, we could talk about science, and then I could just, if like he was drinking absinthe and like the truth serum was flowing through his body, I'd be like, Mr. Obama, tell me about the aliens. I want to know about the aliens. Like, I need to know how many aliens are in clear vertical tubes, immersed in some kind of steroid brine from like, you know, like feta cheese, which comes in like that white container with the blue lid, the Tres Stella brand. Like the aliens are in some kind of salt bath. I want to know what they look like. Do they make sounds? Are they still alive? What does the room smell like? Did you get to touch any of their skin or like all those? I need to know tactile things, smells, sight, taste.
You were one of the 10,000 or 100,000, whatever it was. No, it was more than that on the Joe Rogan Facebook page that we're going to storm Area 51, weren't you?
No. I think they actually did it. I believe there was a documentary on Vice that like interviewed like the organizer of that whole experiment. But no, like you're going on to federal American property. Are you mad? Like you are just giving them license to put red lasers on your back or on your head or your chest and inviting them to blow holes through your body. Are you crazy? No chance. But if I could, with President Obama, tell me about the aliens.
You get to play, let's go to your acting passion. You get to play one role. You can have any role in any blockbuster film you ever wanted. What do you want? What's your
That's awesome. Okay, so this movie hasn't been made yet. I would want to do a buddy comedy. Comedy's hard, but it's really rewarding if you watch it with an audience and they're reacting to all the things that you hope they react to. And also, like, buddy comedies have lines that transcend, or lines that are that dialogue that lasts forever. Like, let's go streaking, or he's going to do one, or once it hits your lips. And that's all from the same movie. That's all from Old School. You know what I mean? So
Old School is my jam. That was a
Right?
great flick.
I would love to do a buddy comedy.
Is it cold out there, Frank?
Right? Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. Like, why in front of the kid? You could just say earmuffs. Why you just, and then you can say beat, boom, boom.
Don't abuse it, Frank.
What's that?
Don't abuse it, Frank.
Yeah, exactly. You know, oh God, you know who would be awesome? And I mean, obviously the heavyweights, Will Smith, Will Ferrell, Kevin Hart, who's never really done a great comedy. It'd be great to do like his first great comedy. But I would love to like Melissa McCarthy is so hilarious to me. Like, what if she was my love interest. And then we were like I know she did a movie called Spy. I was going to say like a spy espionage movie, but I think she did one with Sandra Bullock already called Spy. So I'm not sure what the premise would be. Maybe we were bankers and we're not whistleblowers, but we were like trying to pull off some huge kind of heist or whatever. And then there would just be all kinds of hijinks and the thing wouldn't go off. Like, there's just like everything that could possibly go wrong would go wrong in this movie. But, and also Melissa McCarthy is one of the best at just cursing people out on camera, from Bridesmaids to Tammy to Spy to Heat. Like, she is amazing. So that's probably who I go. I went a little bit off the board there, but she's iconic to me.
Your final one then. Who had the most memorable hug? Because you love hugging guys. So who?
Oh wow, yeah, that's excellent. That is excellent. Oh, that's outstanding. You know, God, it's hard to. It's going to be Michael Jordan because it was 7 long seconds. But 1B is Jennifer Aniston, and I was in this press junket for the movie Horrible Bosses 2, and I think I just threw it out there at the beginning of when I first sat down. Hey, my name is Cabbie Richards. I'm from Toronto. And I mentioned something about a hug. I got to see if I can find like the raw interview clip. It was never published, but anyway, I'm not even sure if this part was on camera. I think it was just in our small talk at the beginning. Anyway, at the end of the interview, then we get up and I was like, are we doing this? She's like, we're doing this. Get up. And then I hug her and I counted out 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. This is Jennifer Aniston, icon, 4 1,000, 5 1,000, like 55, still a smoke show. And then on the 6 1,000, she gave me an extra squeeze. I was like, wow, this is what heaven feels like. So those are two of my most memorable hugs. But I mean, you know, God bless him. Kobe Bean Bryant, like the times where I probably hugged that man 20, 30 times. Like, I've hugged him when we weren't on camera, but he never let me get like long hugs longer than 3 minutes, because then it would be like, come on, Cab. Like, we would snap out of it. But every one of those where I very much cherish.
Well, I really appreciate you hopping on with me. This has been a ton of fun.
Thanks, Sean. Thank you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing what you have in store here in the future. I'm sure you got something up your sleeve for all of us.
Well, hopefully it won't be as obnoxious as I was before, but more importantly, hopefully the audience really responds to it and they dig it and they still care about the stuff that I do. But so thank you for mentioning it, and thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun today.
Hey folks, thanks again for joining us today. If you just stumbled on the show and like what you hear, please click subscribe. Remember, every Monday and Wednesday, a new guest will be sitting down to share their story. The Sean Newman Podcast is available for free on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever else you find your podcast fix. Until next time.